The morning of Thursday, September 25th, 1997. Amman, the Kingdom of Jordan. The method of assassination, a deadly toxin to be administered via an aerosol spray into the ear. The target identified for assassination, Khaled Meshaal, political bureau chief of Hamas, a man the Israeli intelligence agency, Mossad, holds personally responsible for the deaths of hundreds of innocent Israeli civilians. The man Mossad sees as being directly implicit in the spate of terrorist attacks on Israeli soil, as well as being the purveyor of suicide bombers into the heart of the Israeli society, striking fear deep in the Israeli psyche. Hamas being labelled a terrorist organisation by not just the State of Israel and the United States, but also most major democratic Western governments. It would come as no surprise that this sinister designation makes both the Hamas leadership as well as its affiliates and associates fair game for the likes of the Israeli intelligentsia, hell-bent on protecting the very existence and survival of the only Jewish state to exist currently in the world, and to do so at any cost. Israel sees this fight as an existential fight for it and the Jewish people's very survival. This botched assassination attempt would have extremely far-reaching consequences, not just for the Jewish state, but also personally for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, which would culminate in his eventual ousting from office. It would also put immense strain on the developing relationship between the State of Israel and the Kingdom of Jordan, as the two had just set foot on the road to a formidable peace treaty and towards the normalization of relations between the two neighbor states. On that hot and humid, fateful Thursday, Meshaal, his three sons Walid, Bilal and Omar, along with Meshaal's driver and bodyguard Abu Maher, proceeded along the bustling streets of downtown Amman, Jordan, heading towards the Hamas offices in the Gardens district. As their vehicle meandered the busy streets traversing the dusty Middle Eastern roads, Abu Maher noticed a car with two occupants following them. He became suspicious of the vehicle. However, as he turned his vehicle onto Al-Madinah Street, he noticed the car pass them by and continue straight in a direction away from them, thus allaying his fears. Khaled reached his office at Shamia Center around 10 a.m. As his car pulled into the parking space outside the building, he noticed two individuals standing outside at the front of the building. One of the men had a bandage around his hand. He felt that they indeed looked suspicious, and due to the current reprisals by Mossad against Hamas and its operatives of recent, an ominous feeling began to take hold. In hindsight, they were indeed Mossad agents poised to strike the deadly blow. He contemplated the decision to remain within the vehicle and move away, or alight his vehicle and proceed to his offices. Some part of his rational mind took over, reasoning that it was okay to exit the vehicle and, compounded by the volume of work-related issues that demanded his immediate attention, he inevitably relegated any fears he had to a nether corner of his mind and he exited his vehicle. This split-second decision would prove to be a fateful one indeed, but one cannot fail to agree that some higher power had a hand in the destiny of this man whom Mossad had vowed to get at any cost. As Meshaal, his sons, and Abu Maher made their way and began ascending the staircase toward his office, the two Mossad agents approached. A minor scuffle ensued, and Meshaal felt a pulsating electric shock reverberate throughout his entire body. This sensation was simultaneously accompanied by a thunderously loud bang, which heralded the fleeing of his attackers. Fearing he had been shot or exposed to the explosion of a bomb of some kind, Meshaal prepared himself for the worst. However, he was quickly comforted by the fact that there was no gunshot wound or blood anywhere, and he rationalized it as being a botched assassination attempt. At that precise moment, and as luck would have it, Meshaal's other bodyguard, Mohammed Abu Saif, had pulled his car into the parking lot and noticed the commotion. He immediately began chasing the two Mossad agents who were making their getaway. He pursued them on foot until they got into a vehicle that appeared to be waiting for them. The quick-thinking bodyguard made a note of the color, make and registration number of the getaway vehicle. It was a green Hyundai bearing registration number 5374. Meshaal at this precise moment hastily ushered his sons away from the scene with Abu Maher in tow. Realizing the ramifications of what just occurred and that there would be consequences, Meshaal instinctively called his colleagues in the Hamas political bureau and summoned them immediately to a meeting at the home of his colleague and close friend, Mohammed Nazal. Still believing this to be a failed assassination attempt, Meshaal convened the meeting to discuss the events, all the while unaware that the toxin had been administered and was now insidiously infiltrating his body's defenses and laying siege to an increasingly weak body that within 48 hours would succumb to eventual death. Abu Saif, in the meantime, managed to flag down a passing motorist who was completely unaware of what was going on and asked the motorist to follow the green Hyundai. Unbeknownst to the Mossad agents that they were being pursued, they stuck to plan, and the green Hyundai, some distance away from the pickup point, ground to a halt, and the two assailants alighted the vehicle. It was at this point that Abu Saif noticed that the agent who had the bandage around his hand had now removed it, and Abu Saif immediately reasoned that the agents had disposed of their weapons in the getaway car. Abu Saif immediately gave chase, and when to the shock and horror of the agents that they were being hunted set in, they immediately began to run. This gave way to a grueling chase maneuvering through morning traffic in Amman, which involved crossing major motorways. Abu Saif eventually cornered the agents in a ditch near a meandering ravine. A brutal hand-to-hand fight ensued, with Abu Saif and the Mossad agents trading blows. One of the agents managed to strike Abu Saif on the head, causing him to bleed profusely. By now, the fracas had managed to attract a sizable following of curious onlookers. And it is at this very precise moment that another stroke of luck, or divine intervention, as some may say, dealt the Mossad agents another devastating blow. A taxi ferrying a Palestinian Liberation Army officer, Saad al-Khatib, was passing, and Khatib noticed the gathering. He instructed the taxi driver to stop, and Khatib immediately alighted the vehicle. He noticed the altercation, and what stood out immediately was that it was between two foreigners and an Arab man. Abu Saif began yelling, "These are Mossad agents, and they have killed Khaled Meshaal." Upon hearing this, Khatib entered the fray as one of the agents was about to strike Saif on the head with a boulder. Khatib, along with some of the onlookers and Saif, apprehended the agents and took them to Wadi al-Sir police station. It was here that the entire Mossad operation, so meticulously planned, began to unravel at an unprecedented speed. By now the poison in Meshaal had begun to rear its sinister head, and he lapsed into a coma. King Hussein of Jordan was briefed personally by Danny Yotam, the head of Mossad at the time, who flew personally to Jordan as King Hussein had threatened an end to Israeli-Jordanian relations and certain repercussions for the assassination attempt. Netanyahu had given his blessings to Yotam for the trip, and Yotam, in conversation with King Hussein, had admitted that the attempt on Meshaal's life was indeed a Mossad operation. King Hussein demanded an antidote be provided by Israel so that it could be administered to Meshaal. The king also roped in Bill Clinton to impress upon the Israelis to release the antidote. This resulted in Netanyahu capitulating and sending Yotam to Jordan with the antidote, and resulting in Netanyahu having to make a personal trip to Jordan to smooth things over with the king. In hindsight, and on the heels of what subsequently happened in Jordan in 1999, where King Abdullah II of Jordan expelled the Hamas leadership, and the tragic events of October 7, 2023, one can argue that the pressure by King Hussein on the Israelis to hand over the antidote was short-sighted. While some might see this incident as a dethroning of Israel's revered spy intelligence agency, Mossad, from its mantle of invincibility, one thing is certain. The Israelis will go to the most extreme ends, employ the most audacious methods, and attempt even the impossible, to dare to venture where others would call it pure and utter lunacy. And all this to provide safety for their people, a race who from the very beginning of time have faced the unjust wrath and persecution of many an envious nation, people or religion hell-bent on the destruction of the Jewish race. As former Prime Minister of Israel Golda Meir famously said, "We Jews have a secret weapon in our struggle with the Arabs. We have no place to go.